But I just, I find it so cool. It's 29 years old and the thing still runs, you know?
Get down in the car, one time give it all, bust it open hard, let me see you drop. Get down in the car, one time give it all, bust it open hard. Oh shit! Let me see you drop. I fucked up this Russell, day we hustle, but the oh my. I fucked up this Russell, day we hustle, but the oh my. What is my guys? Know that they fly, know that they ride or die. Bust it open hard, let me see you drop. I fucked up this Russell, day we hustle, but the oh my. What am I saying? DJ roll with I fucked up this Russell, day we hustle, but the oh my. Get down in the car, one time give it all, bust it open hard, let me see you drop. Get down in the car, one time give it all, bust it open hard, let me see you drop.
It's finally here. As you can see, the 1UZ-FE in all of its glory. This engine definitely had better days.
It does look like shit.
Before we even got here, there was a few things that we had to check, such as compression, and we bore scoped the cylinders. What we found was the results varied. There's a leaf in the cylinder. 250 psi. There we got 50 psi.
For real? Damn!
And some of it wasn't very inspiring. We're sitting with this situation where it looks like this engine is going to need to be torn apart and honed, new rings, probably new bearings, and gasket set. Probably get some AR. Probably get head studs changed from head bolts to head studs. Yeah, I think head studs would be a better idea. Maybe convert the bolts to the bottom bolts to studs as well, which is a bit overkill for this application because I'm not really going to go boosted, but that may change in the future. And if that does change in the future, then at least we've built some sort of insurance policy into what we're going to do. But for now, what I'm planning to do is I want to start the engine and I want to run it for a couple of seconds, 10, 15 seconds, whatever. After that, I want to pull the HT leads off, the spark plugs, pull them out again, compression test each cylinder, and bore scope it again to see what we find. At this point, the engine needs a little bit of TLC internally anyway. Right? We know we got good oil pressure. We know that it turns over easy. So the timing is correct. I'll even double check that. So at that point, knowing that it needs a little bit of TLC internally anyway. I figured, let's just get it started. We've spent the money, we've got the ECU, we've jerry-rigged the wiring harness in a primitive way, but it works, to see if it runs. And the whole idea behind that is, if it runs and it runs okay, then that gives me an indication that, you know what, it may not need that much attention, which I don't think it does, but regardless, I think this is a better idea going forward anyway. At that point, because of the current state of the economy worldwide, I think we're going to have to probably pause on this, and I might have to find some storage for the Pajero while we get deeper into it, because the further and further we go with this, the more and more this seems to turn out like it's just going to be a 10-year project instead of a 1-year project.
Hey, you wanted this, right? You wanted the real deal? That's what this is. Wake up, you're in the middle of it. You want to run, go ahead, no one's stopping you. Stop complaining.
And I know the difference between a 10-year project and a 1-year project is literally just how much time and money you have to invest in, pardon me, the project. You know, how much time and money you have to invest in the project. Whereas I've got sufficient time, but money is a different story. So it may have to stand on the back burner in the meantime while we generate some funds. Plus there's other things that are a little bit more important at the moment that need to be attended to, but that's a different story. It's about having some fun as well, you know. I've invested a lot of time and money into this thing already, so you know what, do a push-up every time I say time and money. Let's start it, let's see what it sounds like, let's see how it runs, let's compression test the cylinders again, let's bore scope it again after it runs, have a look inside, see what we see, and you know what, yeah, we can take it from there. So let me show you around the setup basically and how you get this sort of thing to run. Okay, so first thing you're going to notice is obviously the wiring harness is all split open. There's none of the trunking and insulation around it. That actually I did prior on the workbench because I needed to remove things like the automatic transmission wiring harness, selector positions, things like that, output speed sensors, so on and so forth, that I'm not going to need because I'm running the ECU as a manual and then using the Mitsubishi transmission, which I've spoken before. On
a real note, how the fuck do y'all say that shit? Mitsubishi?
Mitsubishi's automatic transmission to run the transmission, which makes sense because what else would it run? It's a transmission control unit. But anyway, so basically what I got is, this is a fuel pump, external fuel pump that actually comes from a diesel Audi Q5, so perfect for it. I've got that going into fuel canister with some fuel, 95, and I have blocked off the fuel return because currently at the moment the fuel return keeps flowing fuel back at full pace, at full flow, which means I never build up fuel pressure. The vacuum valve is connected, but I don't know if there's something wrong with the fuel return valve, if it's stuck open. I'm not actually 100% sure if this engine it's always open or always closed, but anyway, EGR is back on just to block up the intake so I don't have any air leaks. O2 sensors are connected, igniters are grounded to the body or the earth on the engine, earth's on, O2 sensors connected, obviously no exhaust system. We come here and in this very neatly constructed maze of wiring is my power supplies, my starter, ignore the test light. This switch here is for my fuel pump, which I've got jerry rigged like that, so when I crank it on, fuel pump runs, builds up fuel pressure. Earth obviously for the fuel pump. Jumper leads that come down, connected to the engine for earth, and the positive line main feed to the starter motor. This is my start signal, which you can see coming up here, which runs down. Don't put that on power just yet. I mean, it'll just crank. But anyway, it comes down, goes to this big black wire here, which is start signal, then bridges off along on this red wire, which I've just repurposed from the transmission wiring harness that I removed, which comes up here and splits to the neutral switch and the start switch that goes into the ECU. I've got a main power feed for my injectors, my coils, and my idle air stabilizer, and some of the vacuum switchover valves and stuff like that, which are running straight off the battery. Everything is fused just in case there's a short. This is running straight off the battery, so I'm not too worried about damaging the ECU, because if anything shorts here, it'll just, you know, melt the wiring, but the fuse will blow before that happens, so we're good to go. As I said, you can see the power wires all strapped up here. The yellow and black that I have running here, we'll start with the pink. The pink is my ignition switch. That will go on, if you can see. So where the black wire is, the black and yellow wire is here. Let me get something that's like a pointer. Anyway, so on this pin here is permanent battery power into the ECU. Above that, to the right hand side, I don't know if you can see, the tip is touching, or not touching, but pointing towards the terminal on the ECU. That is the ignition switch. And down below, you'll see this purple wire, which is bridging this far left pin and that far right pin. This far left pin is MREL, or the main relay switch, and this is plus B, which goes back into the ECU, which is a power supply. So what I've done is I've just taken MREL's power supply and reverted it back into the ECU, just as I say, a very primitive way to run the system, to get it to run that it will run. At the current moment, the ignition is off, so nothing really is live, except for obviously there's power supplies to the injectors and coils, igniters, and vacuum valves such as this, which I don't have connected, but I think if I connect it, you hear it click. No, never mind, scratch that. I don't know what I'm talking about. In the beginning, when I started it, I was having problem. I wasn't having any injector pulse. I did check the cam sensors, which are fine, crankshaft position sensor, which is fine, and I checked the spark, which is good. So everything was working well. I had actually just I can't remember what I did actually, but I did something which wasn't allowing me to get injector pulse, so it wasn't starting in the beginning. It was just cranking. So we managed to bypass that and get it running, so it now runs, which is what we want. So yeah, so I'm gonna set up the GoPro on the side here, and yeah, we can start her up and see how she runs, and then take it from there. I don't have ear protection, so what I'll have to do is I'll just have to cut up some rags and stick them in my ear. Another thing that's quite interesting is this engine is from a vehicle which I'm pretty sure was built in 1995. Essentially, I think the 1UZFV started production in 1989, if I'm not mistaken, but obviously there were changes and revisions going forward all the way to the 1UZFV VTI and then eventually the 3UZ. I'm not too sure if the 2UZ has any relation, but anyway, that if this engine was built in 1995, that makes this engine 29 years old already. That's crazy.
We're not too old for this shit. Yeah.
29 years old. No? It's 2024. Toyota, so this thing works in like reverse dog years, so they're 29 years old. Just technically this engine's only like 6 years old, you know, whereas a German car, if it's 6 years old, it's like dog years. It's actually like 65 years old. But anyway, so first things first, ignition. Crank it over. So, just cranks. So, now we add fuel pressure. it runs, man. I love this shit. And it sounds cool as hell. Did you hear that? Boy, play that again. And by looking at it, you can just tell that it hasn't exactly had what someone would call the silver spoon life for an engine. It's been abused. It's got oil leaks all over the place. Most of the shit is cheap aftermarket parts that's on it. Except for the tensioner, that's genuine Toyota. And the starter, which is still genuine Toyota. Even works to this day, 29 years old. I mean, I don't know if it's ever been replaced. But, you know, I'd be comfortable to bet that that's the original starter when the engine was built, because it's Toyota, so it most likely is. But 29 years old and it still starts and runs. Yeah, it was jumping around and but I mean, there's a lot of variables with that. You know, I don't know how long this engine stood before it actually ran for a while. I bought the engine and the transmission already out of the vehicle from some dude up in Carpety. So, you know, but it runs and it starts first pop and it doesn't struggle to run at all. So now we're gonna compression test again, bore scope again, and we're gonna have a look and compare what we see versus before. The before and after, if you will. And I mean, maybe they won't tell us much, because at the end of the day, we know this bad boy's got to get stripped down. So that's the inevitable. But in the meantime, we can have a bit of fun just poking around and seeing what we see, you know. But I find it so cool. It's 29 years old and the thing still runs, you know. I know there's a lot of people out there who be like, 29 years, not Toyota, blah, whatever. Yeah, I get it, but for an engine that was lying on the floor in some dude's garage, no one knew where it came from. I didn't know where it came from. That dude apparently bought it already taken out of another car. May need head gaskets. It definitely needs an engine hone, and it's probably gonna need it needs a rebuild. So basically how I'm going to approach is I'm not exactly sure how the cylinders are numbered. I know the injectors are actually numbered according to firing order, if I'm not mistaken. So they don't go injector 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They go like 1, 3, well, not in exactly that order. However the firing order is, I'm pretty sure that's how it goes in it. And I think it's like 1, 6, something like that. But anyway, essentially what I'm trying to say is I'm just going to, for ease of purpose and concept to just stay focused, I'm gonna run it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just to get an idea. Regardless, we're gonna work that way with the numbering of the cylinders. It's just easier, simpler, narrows it down. And from that process, we're gonna write down the PSI of each cylinder and make a note. I think first things first, let's just have a bore scope at the insides and work our way from there. So, as you can imagine, it's not looking very good. Look, we knew this. What can I say? Inevitably, I knew when I scoped it the first time that this engine's going to need to be rebuilt. But, you know, it was just a curious little itch that I needed to scratch to see what would happen if it ran and to see what would happen after it ran for a little bit. But that scoring, you can imagine, it'll probably eat away at the ring, whatever's remaining of the ring, and you don't want something to damage a ring land. You don't want something to damage a ring. You don't want the cylinder bore to eat away. Knowing Toyota, this thing will probably run for another 100,000 kilometers with those problems. But yeah, for the application that we want, it's just going to need to be, I mean, ultimately I'll have to make a decision. I'm either going to have to sell the engine, sell the Pajero, and move on to the next thing, or commit to this project that it's going to take a lot longer and go from there, and then just tick at it bit by bit. But I think the next step right now is we're going to compression test it, and we're going to see what that reveals. So we'll go in our makeshift cylinder one, or quote unquote decided cylinder one. Didn't have a choice, it became cylinder one. Look up our compression tester and let's start marking down cylinders PSI. That looks visible. Where's my starter switch? Okay, so quote unquote cylinder number one. Let's see what we get. $230 PSI. Alright, cylinder number two. $220 odd PSI. Let's go again. Cylinder 3. Also 220. Okay. Number 4. Also 220. Okay, cylinder 5. $210. 6. $220. Did we rev it right? Who would have thought, huh? Number 7. $220. Last but not least. That actually doesn't make any sense. Last but not least. Last but not least. Maybe it's the last cylinder, but it won't have the least amount of compression. Last but not least. That's where it originated. Mechanics. Compression tested. All cylinders was the last cylinder, but it didn't have the least compression. Last but not least. There you go. $220. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a healthy engine. Sort of. I mean, that's kind of I mean, that's kind of indicative of this whole project. Just one step forward, 2 steps back. Had it not had those cylinder bores just been okay, I could have looked past some of that scoring on the cylinder from obviously the piston moving up and down on thrust sides, but man, I could have looked past that, just gave it a good refresh and carried on. But the corrosion or the oxidation on the cylinder bores is no bueno. It's not even a little bueno, it's no bueno. So now the problem with that is,
now me and the mad scientist got to rip apart the block.
it's gonna have to be rebuilt regardless. There's no getting away from it. And it sucks because the compression is perfect. I mean, I gotta check that because that seems a bit high from what I was reading, but if all of them are around the same, which is between 210 and 230 psi, I mean, we got 230, 220, 220, 220, 210, 220, 220, 220. Must be normal. But yeah, well, anyway, this was pretty much the whole video. I don't want to make a video that's too long or anything like that, but I guess in a nutshell, it was just to start it up here at running because I've been talking about yapping about doing that for I don't know how long in the other videos, so I thought I'd finally do it. But essentially, yep. I don't know what to do next. I need the space open to make extra money and obviously chase the dream. I want to complete my project as well because this has become something I really want to achieve. But it's either I have to give up on it, scrap the whole project, sell everything up, and then just move on to focusing on one thing, or I need to store it somewhere and commit. I don't know. It's a difficult decision, and it's not being made easier. Anyway, if you're watching, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Check out my other videos. Yeah, hopefully you find something useful in it. Hopefully it entertains you. If not, whatever. I'm gonna keep doing it anyway. But look after yourselves out there, and yeah. Peace. 220 psi. Damn.